Today's episode is about government experiments. You know, the kind where scientists were supposed to make penicillin, but instead decided, hey, what if we gave Bob 3 arms and a permanent craving for raccoon meat?
Exactly, because the government always takes science way too far. You give them a petri dish and suddenly they're like, let's make a death ray that doubles as a toaster.
Oh yeah, perfect. A breakfast death machine? Nothing says good morning like, do you want your bagel lightly toasted or obliterated from existence?
Oh yeah, you joke, but somewhere deep in a bunker, there's probably a toaster labeled MK Ultra Deluxe Edition. And the CIA's like, don't eat the toast, dude, unless you want to believe pigeons are government drones.
Dude, what? Pigeons aren't drones.
Oh really? Then why have you never seen a baby pigeon?
Simple, dude. I don't crawl up into birds' nests looking for
Okay,
them.
fine. Why don't you crawl into the next episode then? Like, welcome. Oh yeah, that's right. You like to do the thing.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the Wit Show, where smart meets stupid and somehow makes sense. My name's Georgie, and I'm thinking out loud so you don't have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Wit Show. From what I think seriously to you.
WITS, The Wit Show.
Cool story,
bro. And welcome back to the Wit Show, dude. Just kidding. Welcome back, my friends. You've made it to another round of the Wit Show. I hope you're buckled in, because today we're not just dipping our toes into conspiracy or folklore. Oh no, not today. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the darkest chapters of human history. But before we go full throttle into the shadows, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in again. Every time you guys press play, you're stepping deeper with me into the strange, the twisted, and the truths that most people just would rather ignore. And that support, it really does mean a lot. So every like, every comment, every share, any podcaster will tell you that it makes a huge difference on their channel. So make sure you get out there and you tell everybody about The Wit Show. Or I'm going to do a segment about you. A strange, dark one where I come to your house and you're sleeping. And I'm staring at... I'm just kidding. Anyway, we're going to roll into the next episode here. Speaking of sleeping, let's talk about nightmares that weren't whispered in fairy tales. No. These were written in government documents. We're going to talk about experiments that are so gruesome that makes even the darkest urban legends pale in comparison. Today, we enter the icy, horrific corridors of Unit 731. This isn't folklore. This isn't speculation. This is real history, wrapped in secrecy, cruelty, and conspiracy. And the further we peel back the layers, the more you realize the governments across the world may have learned far too much from these horrors. So get comfortable. Or maybe don't. Let's step back into World War II, to the desolate outskirts of Harbin, Manchuria, a place where one of the darkest chapters in human history was written in the shadows, a chapter most people would never even hear about in schools. This place was called Unit 731. Officially, it was a medical research facility, but in reality, it was a slaughterhouse disguised as science. Inside its walls, Japanese scientists conducted experiments so gruesome, so inhumane, that even Nazi doctors at Auschwitz might have shuddered. And the worst part is when the war ended, these people weren't tried for their crimes. No. They were rewarded. I think personally that's why this entire story is so horrible to me. The fact that these people got away from this stuff. It's a perfect example of how evil prevails and typically isn't punished. I mean, we hear all the time that justice rules everything, but in reality, when? We only hear about people getting punished for crimes they commit. What about the ones that they commit in silence and get away with? Like this one. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's talk about the horrors. Imagine prisoners, Chinese civilians, Russian POWs, even women and children. All these people dragged out into a brutal Manchurian winter, with temperatures dropping below -40, their arms exposed, doused in water, held until the skin literally froze solid. Allegedly, you could hear the flesh crackle like glass. Then, these victims were brought inside, their frozen limbs plunged into boiling water, just so the doctors could watch the skin blister, peel, and rot away. All of it carefully documented. Some of the subjects were tied down and deliberately infected with the plague, cholera, or anthrax. Entire villages were bombed with the plague-infested fleas, just to measure how fast the outbreak would spread. Oh, and then, the vivisections, surgeries without anesthesia. Prisoners cut open while they were alive. Their organs were removed one by one so researchers could observe how long the body would struggle before it shut down. All in the name of science. Yeah, science. Okay. Evil science. Personally, I think it was state-sanctioned torture. Oh, and it wasn't just a few mad doctors. It was a whole system. Thousands of men and women working side by side, logging data, treating human beings like lab rats. And here's the most disturbing part. It worked. The Japanese military got their data. They learned how frostbite kills. They learned how the plague spreads. They learned how much suffering a human being can endure before it finally breaks down. All in the name of science. So that's how we're going to justify it. In the name of science. Now here's where the story gets truly sinister. When the Japanese lost the war, what do you think happened to the scientists? Were they punished? Tried as war criminals? No. No, the United States government cut a deal with them. That's right, United States of America, where we're the freest country on earth, even though we have the highest incarceration rate per capita. Oh yeah, that's right, because we benefit from locking people up. It's a frickin' business, people. Pay attention. There's no such thing as reform in prison. Criminals get out and they commit again. That's just how it works. I could do an entire podcast on it. I really could, and it drives me insane. So back to cutting deals with the United States government. Yeah, that's right. The very country that condemned the Holocaust. The very same country that hanged Nazi officers at Nuremberg. Yeah, that's the one. They quietly gave immunity to Unit 731 doctors. And for what? In exchange, we took their research, their notes, their experiments, their data. American generals decided that information about biological warfare was too valuable to burn. So the scientists who froze children to death in the snow walked free. Some lived long, comfortable lives, and their work didn't vanish. It became a seed of Americans' own biological warfare programs. So think about that for a moment. Every time we talk about Cold War bioweapons or gain-of-function experiments today, remember this. The blueprint may have started with Unit 731. And the worst part is that the knowledge wasn't stolen. It was purchased with blood. But if you thought that Unit 731 was just about test tubes and hidden labs, think again. The horrors went far beyond white coats and microscopes. What happens inside and outside those walls was nothing short of weaponized nightmare fuel. Let's start with the weapon testing, right? Human beings weren't being treated as prisoners here. They were being treated as target dummies. Grenades, flamethrowers, chemical weapons, even bayonets, all tested directly on live people. Imagine being tied down to a wooden stake with nothing but rope holding you still while soldiers calculated how close a blast could get before it tore you apart. They would place some of these prisoners at varying distances like chess pieces on a board just so the Japanese scientists could measure blast radius and injury patterns. And others, well, they were used as literal practice dummies for bayonets and swords. Stabbed, slashed, executed, all in the name of research. And if it wasn't enough, they had biological bombs filled with plague-infested fleas or cholera, and they were dropped in controlled areas just to see how quickly the sickness would spread. But it didn't stop with weapons. Unit 731 also delved into the body itself. Victims were drained of blood until they collapsed, their bodies trembling from shock. Doctors watched, scribbling notes on how long it took for life to fade. Some were injected with animal blood or with the wrong human blood type to observe what would happen. And spoiler alert, it never ended well. You gotta be a sick human to watch this kind of stuff. To be even a part of it, nothing is more evil to me than this. This is absolutely disgusting. These transfusion experiments led to violent reactions. Convulsions, organ failure, and even death. And every death was just another data point for their so-called science. Yeah, monsters exist, boys and girls. They're just in the form of humans. Evil, sick humans. Some of these prisoners were herded into chambers and exposed to poisonous gases like mustard gas. And others were starved and deprived of water just to measure the survival limits. Some were forced into pressure chambers, and it was cranked up so high that their eyes bursted from their sockets, their organs ruptured under the strain, and it gets even darker than that. Pregnant women were deliberately infected with diseases to study how illnesses transferred to the unborn. Think about that. A government-backed program intentionally experimenting on mothers and their babies. But no. Definitely trust your government. Trust your government, because they know what's best for you. Oh, but here's the kicker. The horrors of Unit 731 didn't always start behind locked gates. The experiments spilled out into the world in what they called field testing. We're talking entire villages in China were exposed to cholera, anthrax, and the plague. Food and water supplies were tainted. Flea bombs carrying Black Death were dropped from planes. Civilians, farmers, entire families wiped out in waves of epidemics that were not accidents. They were just these gruesome tests from the government. Some estimates say that as many as 400,000 Chinese civilians died from these deliberate outbreaks. 400,000. Think about that. That is a lot of people. Can you imagine your own government wiping out 400,000 of your own people in the name of science? Yeah, we care about you, but we're going to kill like 400,000 of you just to see what happens. Yeah, so when you hear about Unit 731, don't think of it as a hidden lab lost in time. Think of it as a machine designed to turn suffering into science and science into weapons. Weapons that killed, infected, tortured, and spread misery far beyond its walls. And all of its discoveries were carried forward, protected, and absorbed into programs around the world. And the victimizers got to walk away scot-free. Some of them even died peacefully in their own beds. But any way you want to look at it, Unit 731 was absolutely terrifying, in my opinion. People like this, in my opinion, should burn in a very, very special place in hell. Speaking of people like this, have you heard of the Doctor of Death from Auschwitz? When people think of Nazi Germany, they think of concentration camps, ovens, mass graves. But inside Auschwitz, there was another level of horror. Not mass death, but mass experimentation. And the center of all of it was one man, Joseph Mengele. History calls him the Angel of Death. He was obsessed with twins. He wanted to unlock the secrets of genetics to somehow engineer a master race. So he performed experiments so twisted they barely sound real. He'd inject chemicals into one twin to see if the other would react. He'd sew twins together, vein to vein, just to watch their bodies reject each other. He'd conduct surgeries without anesthesia, sometimes removing organs, sometimes amputating limbs, just to see how long a child, yes, a child, could live without them. And through it all, survivors said he would hum, calmly, almost cheerfully, as if it was just another day at the office. Auschwitz wasn't just another death camp. It was a laboratory of human cruelty. And here's the truth people don't like to talk about. Mengele and others weren't doing this for sadism alone. They were just gathering data, just like, Unit 731. Data on endurance, data on trauma, data on heredity, data on what breaks the human mind. A lot of people think that when the war ended, that the data should have been destroyed and burned, but personally, I feel like all those people would have died for nothing. And I'm not saying that in support of what these horrible people did. It's just that in a cruel reality, a lot of this data has actually helped doctors and scientists make medical advancements that we wouldn't have seen without it. But it always makes you wonder, at what cost? It was a horrible, horrible thing that these people did to these other people. And going back, if we knew what we knew now, would we have stopped it? Would our government actually go over there and prevent this from ever happening? Or are they just as sick as the people conducting the experiments and think that this was a great purpose? That the torture and experiments conducted was a great idea? Or are they justifying it as, well, it wasn't our people, so we don't really care, we just want the data? If you're anything like me, then you believe that there is only one race of people, and that's the human race. So honestly, I think that if you're in agreement with something that's this horrific, and you condone it, you're just as evil as the people committing the crime, in my opinion. Who granted these people immunity? Who allowed them to live the rest of their lives out without justice? Because honestly, these poor innocent people, these children, these mothers, tell me in what reality you think that this was justified, in any bit of it. How did any of these people deserve any of this? It's all so wrong on so many levels. And the fact that just like Unit 731, much of that research didn't just disappear. It was smuggled and stolen and repurposed, and that the Americans saw value in it. Not morality, no justice, just value. That's the kind of government that we have right now. And so through Operation Paperclip, Nazi scientists were brought to America. Some worked on rockets, some worked on medicine, but others carried the shadows of Auschwitz with them. And those shadows helped fuel the new programs in the Cold War. Programs where, once again, human beings were being test subjects. Only this time, the experiments weren't happening overseas. They were happening right here on our soil, on our people. After World War II, the United States launched something called Operation Paperclip. On the surface, it was about scooping up Nazi rocket scientists like Wernher von Braun. But behind the curtains, it was about much more. We weren't just importing rocket technology. We were importing the knowledge born in places like Auschwitz or Unit 731. The Japanese scientists who unleashed plague bombs, they were quietly flown to the U.S. Their data and biological warfare was funneled in Fort Detrick, America's top bioweapons lab. Nazi doctors with experience in chemical torture, radiation, and psychological trauma, they weren't hung. Oh no. The United States government gave them new identities, new homes, and new jobs. Often in American universities, hospitals, military research centers. And it didn't stop there. The Cold War lit the fuse, and suddenly America was running the experiments. The ones that looked eerily familiar. Entire U.S. cities secretly sprayed with biological agents just to see how it spread. Patients in hospitals injected with plutonium without their knowledge to test the radiation sickness. Soldiers placed at ground zero of nuclear blasts just to observe the effects. And of course, MKUltra, the CIA program that shattered minds with LSD, electroshock, and psychological torture, all in the name of creating programmable humans. Do you see the pattern yet? Auschwitz, Unit 731, and now America? Different flags, same playbook, the same idea that human lives are disposable if they can serve that state. And the difference? The US didn't just inherit the research, we institutionalized it. We made it part of our science, we made it part of our government. And if you look across the 20th century, you start to see a disturbing pattern. Japanese uses war to justify human experimentation. Nazi Germany does the same. The US, instead of condemning it, it absorbs it. It's as if governments, when given the excuse of war or secrecy, all turn into the same thing. Machines that see human beings not as citizens, but test subjects. And if this is true, then maybe it doesn't matter what nation you live under. Because when the stakes get high enough, when the right excuse comes along, every government seems to play the same card. The card where your life, your body, your very mind is just another variable in their experiment. And they don't care if you're a woman or a child or if you're pregnant, if you're old. It doesn't matter. You're just another piece in their puzzle. The power should always be with the people, but it's not. It's always with the big government. The bigger the government, the less power you have as a person. And when it comes to freedom, you don't have rights. You have right now. So should you trust your government? Me personally, I absolutely don't. Laws were written by men who didn't have laws, and now they're enforced by mass groups of people that say if you don't do what I tell you to, we're just going to kill you, or lock you up, or take you away. And hopefully that place that they take you away to is not some secret base somewhere where they're going to conduct some freaking experiment on you. You'll just end up as another statistic or another piece of data in their freaking playbook. And they're not going to remember your name. Oh no, you're just going to be that one guy they poured acid onto his arm to see what the adverse reactions were. So let's put it all together. Unit 731, Auschwitz, Paperclip, Fort Detrick, MKUltra. What if these weren't separate horrors? What if these were steps in a single, ongoing project? A project not about war, but about control, about learning how to redesign humanity itself. Think about it. Unit 731 taught governments how to manipulate biology. Auschwitz taught them how to manipulate genetics and psychology. MKUltra proved that you could fracture and rebuild the mind. And together, they formed the blueprints, a manual for creating human beings who are no longer truly human, but programmable assets. And the scariest part? We know our governments pardoned these men. We know the data was absorbed, which means this isn't just history. This is a foundation that we're still building on. What if the pandemic research today is just a sanitized version of Unit 731? What if trauma-based training programs echo Auschwitz? What if modern surveillance and behavioral science are just MKUltra, but with better technology? So the question isn't, did the government experiment on people? We already know the answer is yes. The real question is, what chapter are we in right now? What are we going to find out later on that they're doing right now? And if the past is any indication, maybe we're not the observers of the experiment at all. Maybe we're the subjects. So here we are. We've walked through the frostbitten quarters of Unit 731, through the chambers of the vivisection, diseases, and living target practices. We've seen how science was twisted into cruelty and how the pursuit of power stripped away the humanity of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. But here lies the question I can't stop asking myself, and maybe you can't either. What happens to the knowledge born in hell? Does it get buried, forgotten, sealed in some vault to rot with the guilty? Or does it live on, passed hand to hand, country to country, to shape the future in shadows? Because here's what history tells us. The United States granted immunity to many of these scientists at Unit 731. Instead of being put on trial for crimes against humanity, many of them were protected. Why? Because the U.S. wanted the research, the data gathered from human suffering, the so-called science of frostbite, of contagion, of biological warfare. Instead of burning it, they absorbed it. File cabinets filled with horror didn't vanish, they moved. And that brings us to the conspiracy. What if the dark seed of Unit 731 is still alive today? Projects like MKUltra showed us that the U.S. government wasn't above secret, unethical human trials, and reports suggest the Soviets ran similar programs. Was some of this rooted in the data stolen from Manchuria? If Unit 731 unlocked methods of spreading plague, anthrax, or cholera, is it really so crazy to believe that the government would keep that knowledge tucked away just in case? Every time we hear about a mysterious outbreak, a disease that spreads in ways no one can predict, like, maybe COVID-19, part of me wonders, is this natural evolution or the fingerprints of something far older, far darker, still echoing from Unit 731? This is why I dig into these stories. This is why I can't let it go. Because in knowing the past, the real, raw, uncomfortable truth, we might be able to spot the patterns repeating around us. And if you're still listening, if you've made it this far, it means you're one of the very few who's willing to look into the dark and not blink. That makes you dangerous in a world built on secrets. And I like that. So thank you for joining me on this journey through Unit 731 and all that crap in Auschwitz. Thank you for being a part of The Witch Show. And episode 10 is just right around the corner, and trust me, it's only going to get wilder from here. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and remember, shadows always hide the deepest truths. Make sure to like and follow and leave a comment or a crazy story. If it's good enough, like always, I'll feature it in my next episode. My name's Georgie, and I'm thinking out loud so you don't have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Witch Show from What I Think Seriously to You.
WITS.